For Eyewitness News, talking to Douglas Murray, author and journalist. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What are you doing here? You here to look at our beautiful democracy and what it's morphed into?
I'm certainly here to learn about what's happening here in South Africa. I haven't been here for a few years. I am very interested in what's happening here and in the region. And yes, South Africa's coming under a lot of attention.
Yes, I read some of your comments about our move to, taking Israel to the ICJ, and you said that we did that in order to hide the problems at home. Elaborate.
I think there's a lot in that. I always think that for voters in any country, you have first order priorities. Getting the water clean, getting the roads running, getting infrastructure working, getting healthcare working, getting education working. And I do think that quite often in my observation, I've covered a lot of countries around the world, quite often in my observation, those first order priorities, if a government fails at them, it does distraction techniques. I think the ICJ thing is a distraction technique. I don't think it's something which is of primary importance to the people of South Africa. I don't think it's a first order priority for the voters. And I'm suspicious when governments pull these kinds of international tricks.
Don't you think somebody had to do it?
No, not at all. I mean, there's an awful lot of things going on in the world. I've covered an awful lot of conflicts. I don't think that at all that what's happening in Gaza is genocide. I think it's an unbelievable smear against Israel. I've covered that war, as I've covered many others.
Don't you think it's a self-inflicted smear against Israel?
No, I mean, I was in Ukraine last year. Are the Ukrainians committing genocide? I ask you.
What's that got to do with Israel?
I ask you, there are many wars going on.
Yeah.
Is Ukraine committing genocide?
No.
Right.
Is Russia committing genocide?
Russia is committing a war of hostile aggression, for sure. Although it doesn't seem to be attempting to eradicate the Ukrainian population as a whole, which is, of course, what genocide is.
Which is what Israel seems to be doing with Palestine.
Which is not doing.
I know that you worked for Fox News, and I was called by Fox News some time back to talk about the genocide happening in South Africa, and I said there is no genocide happening in South Africa. So I was surprised that Fox could then see what was happening in South Africa as genocide, and yet what's happening in Israel as...
I don't speak for Fox. But the allegation of genocide against Israel, why would Israel be committing genocide in Gaza?
Well, what would you describe it?
It's a war. It's which I've seen up close.
Okay.
So let me just explain that. If you start a war, which is what Hamas did on the 7th of October, if you start a war, there are repercussions. There are repercussions to Russia for starting a war against Ukraine. Russia's lost a lot of troops. There are repercussions for Hamas for starting a war against Israel.
So do you think there are repercussions for an illegal occupation?
What's the illegal occupation?
Of Israel against the Palestinians.
Where?
That is an illegal occupation.
Where?
It is a determined illegal occupation.
Gaza?
Of course, Gaza and the West Bank.
Have you been to Gaza?
Yes, I have.
Is it occupied by the Israelis?
It's completely sealed off, as you know. That's
by
why
who?
They call it by the Israelis.
And who?
By the Israelis, by the US, and whoever else supports
and who else?
The Israelis. Isn't that enough?
No, tell me who else is allegedly sealing the Gaza.
I'm saying that Israel has completely encircled Gaza. Nothing goes in, nothing goes
Gaza
out, as you know.
Well, as you know, if you've been, Gaza also has a border with Egypt. Why do you not mention Egypt? Egypt has a stronger fence to fence in the people of Gaza.
Okay,
than
so
Israel
you agree
does.
that Gaza has been fenced off?
No, it's fenced off, although you might note that there are more workers until the 7th allowed into Israel to work and indeed to have medical treatments and others that were considered necessary, which Hamas doesn't provide. There was plenty more people every day coming into work in Israel from Gaza until the 7th than were going the other way into Egypt. So I go back to this question. why do you say there's an illegal occupation of Gaza? Why did you say that?
Because there is.
Why? Well, who
Israel
is occupying
is an occupying state.
No.
It is internationally recognized.
No. It's not. It's not at all.
I want to move
that's
on.
That's your view. Hang on. That's your view, and I have to correct your view.
Our views
I
differ.
have to correct. No, it doesn't. The facts, our views might differ, but the facts are the facts, and I want to pick you up on something you just did.
I'm interviewing you.
I know, but
Yes.
I think you're uninformed.
No.
So let me just.
Hardly.
So let me. You are uninformed
Oh,
because
really?
first of all,
Yes.
you didn't say that Egypt is blockading Gaza. Secondly, you claim that Israel.
I'm talking about Israel here, and I want to move.
It's very convenient for you to mention Israel because you've clearly got an animus here. But let me come on to the second point. Let me come to the second point. As you well know, in 2005. Israeli troops ripped Jewish families from their home in the Gaza.
That was after Palestinians had been ripped from their homes in Gaza.
I mean, how far back do you want to go? You can do the Hebron massacre of 1924
no,
if you want.
Absolutely.
But let me finish.
What I want to finish one point. What I want to talk about is we're talking about the action at the International Court of Justice.
No.
Okay.
But first of all, before we go on to that, you've got to
South
inform your
Africa's
viewers.
actions there.
Yes, but we've got to inform your viewers of the facts, and you just misled them. In 2005, Israeli troops ripped every Jewish family from their homes in Gaza and handed over all of Gaza, which was completely clear of Jews.
That was after two Nakbas, I think in 1948 and 1967, when Palestinians were ripped from their homes that were originally there.
That's your
I know, so let's
specific interpretation of the history, and yours is a very no. But we can agree to disagree, but don't misinform your viewers. And
Likewise.
you can go back. Well, I'm not misinforming your viewers. I'm informing them because you're not. The point that I'm trying to make, which
Israel
you keep
moved away
on,
from Gaza, and Gaza has been sealed off
the
ever
point
since.
you keep on trying to distract everyone from is that Israel took every Jew from Gaza in 2005, handed it over to the Palestinians, who then voted in Hamas, and to the great detriment of the Palestinian people. They have been ruled by Hamas for the last 18 years. If you want to look to the source of the conflict, look to that fact.
Okay, so how many illegal settlements are there in the West Bank that's also illegal under the United Nations, under international law? Those settlements on the West Bank are illegal.
Which ones were legal in your view?
In the Middle East, and every time there would be a peace agreement, settlements would pop up, and that's why we are where we are today.
No, it's not.
So let's try and move on.
No,
let's try and move on.
It's not at all why we are where we are.
Hang on. We're not achieving anything here, so let's try and move on.
No.
Let's try and move on.
No, it's very because you just did it again. You just threw in another false fact. We are not where we are today because of settlements in the West Bank that are disputed. That's not why Hamas broke out of Gaza on the 7th of October and massacred people in their homes.
As
that's
we know,
that's
Hamas
not
got
because
Israeli
of the West Bank,
support
and you well
to take
know
on
it. You well know that.
And
you well know that Hamas did not commit the massacre of the 7th of October because of settlements. They did it by their own admission because they want to massacre every Jew they can get their hands on, and Hamas has said they will do it again and again. So don't get onto the distraction of settlements. That is a second order priority. The first order...
It's easy to fob those off, isn't it?
It's easy for you to try to distract people about it. But I'm saying,
don't
distract them from the crimes of Hamas. Don't do that.
I'm not distracting.
Well, you are. You just said that's why they did it. You said they did it because of the settlements.
And those crimes by Hamas were repugnant.
I'm glad you said that, finally.
Finally. But what I'm saying...
You've been here for some time with you going on about settlements and everything else.
So we've got an illegal occupying force. We've got a situation that is making... I mean, Hamas has grown in popularity ever since this war on Gaza because Israel is making people more and more increasingly militant. So what is happening at the moment...
Israel's making people more militant.
...is not working.
Do you think that Hamas is making people more militant or not?
Let's go back to the ICJ.
Do you think that Hamas is making people more militant or not?
Well, it's a catch-22, isn't it?
I see.
And I mean, until this illegal occupation is broken, until the suffering of the Palestinians is acknowledged...
Do you think that Hamas are interested in a solution where there's any Jew in that region or not?
I'm asking you the questions, and
I'd love you to answer that one.
No, we can answer it. Let's just move on.
Have a go then.
Okay. So
have a go.
ICJ,
Do you think Hamas want a peaceful solution with the Jews?
I'm asking you the questions. We can discuss this afterwards.
Oh no, I'd love to do this one on air. Do you think Hamas want to live beside the Jews? Yes or no?
They have recently said that they would be happy to live next to Jews, but they want a two-state solution. A two-state solution has been in the offing.
Hamas has not said they want a two-state solution. They carried out a massacre on October the 7th of as many people as they could, stole a lot of hostages who you still also haven't referred to. There's more than 100 Jewish hostages still in Gaza. That's real kidnapping, and that's real occupation of somebody. And Hamas has said they do it again and again.
How do you feel when you see those children who've been shot in the back of the head? How do you feel when you see those children?
The Jewish
who are
children or the
suffering,
Palestinian children?
The Palestinian children.
I feel the same on each of them. I think it's all a tragedy.
Okay, good.
And I think
it's
all on Hamas.
Both sides.
I think
so
it's
let's
all
try
on
and move
Hamas.
on.
They shouldn't have started a war.
Let's try.
There's consequences to starting a war.
Yes, there are consequences. Yeah. All right. So the ICJ, South Africa, you say it's doing that to obscure what's happening here at home. What do you see happening here at home? Where do you think our democracy is, considering that the ANC is probably going to lose its 50%, and people are talking about a bit of an unholy alliance with the MK, Zuma's current party, and the EFF. Do you have thoughts on that?
No, my one thought is that I hope that whoever is in power in this country is able to address the very serious challenges this country faces, which just seem unnecessarily tragic to me. I think it's just appalling that you should have a situation in a country that's rich in resources, rich in talent, rich in so many things, that there should be things like, that the city we're in should not have enough power for the population. These are questions which a responsible government can address. These are not, we were just addressing a very, very difficult question. But providing power, providing education, using your resources, well, these aren't impossible questions. They're not the hardest international or national questions to answer. But obviously this is for the South African public to decide who is most competent to provide the most basic necessities that the people of this country deserve.
What do you make of, I don't know if you've heard of Panyaza Lesufi, and he's got his little army that he's putting together, and he has basically picked thousands of unemployed youth, and he is turning them into some sort of security force. There's concern that this kind of move with your own private army, what we're seeing is heading towards an increasingly militant scenario for South Africa.
Yeah, in general, the creation of private armies is
a concern
everywhere. I've seen it in a lot of different countries. It's usually the moment where somebody starts to turn a basic security apparatus around them that sometimes is needed, even in the most developed democracies. Sometimes there are security concerns, but the moment that people start to move that into, as you say, a sort of private army, it's actually not hard to tell that transformation. When people, instead of, for instance, looking after the person they're meant to look after, is used as an intimidation force. I've seen in many countries.
What is the view of what's happening in South Africa? I think there's something like 24 states also partaking in elections in Africa. We know that there's 64 worldwide. But how important is South Africa seen from where you are, and the developments in the country and our alliances within the BRICS? And you have Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Egypt as the most recent members, where democracy is not high on their agenda.
Well, I think that there's a worry worldwide about a genuine shift that might be happening in our day, and sometimes shifts that are happening in your day are hard to see because you could see them if they're in the rear-view mirror, but as they're going on, they're harder to see. I think there is a general shift somewhere in the global alliance between democratic countries and non-democratic countries. That's been going on for some time. And the two countries, obviously in the non-democratic countries who have the most influence, are obviously Russia and China. Both have enormous resources, enormous power, and a desire to influence things their way. Now, you might say, well, all countries want to influence things their way, the democracies want to influence things their way. That's true. But there are some relationships which we all have in the world's democracies, which we have to be very, I think, wary of. Let me give, I mean, there's a couple of examples. London, where I was born, I don't spend very much time there anymore, but London, where I was born, took quite a lot of Russian money through one way and another in recent decades, started to realize actually that comes at a certain price. Another example is Qatar. Qatar has huge amounts of money. It's a very small state, as you know, but a tiny population, but has vast resources. Qatar managed to make significant investments in Britain. And then you start to realize it comes with a catch somewhere down the road. So I would just say always, choose your friends carefully, internationally as well as in your life.
How would you define democracy? What should it look like? Who pulls it off? Because it seems that one person's democracy is different to somebody else's.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one challenge in the world at the moment is that the world's foremost democracy, America, is undergoing significant problems at home. And I don't think that's ideal for somebody who's a great supporter and believer in democracy, like me. That's a huge challenge. Americans can't agree on anything at the moment, incredibly divided and much more. However, it still remains, as famously said by Winston Churchill, the best system apart from all of the others. I mean, or the worst system, sorry, he said, I misquoted him. He said it's the worst system apart from all of the others.
I think Turkey's Erdogan said the democratic bus is something that you hop on. And then when you get to your destination, you hop off.
Yes, and that is the biggest danger in any democracy, is exactly that, is exactly what Erdogan said, is people who would use democracy to effectively stop democracy. And that can happen in developed democracies. We have one, there's a left-wing politician who died some years ago in the UK called Tony Benn, who had a wonderful set of things. It was one of the few things he and I really agreed on. But he had a set of questions he always said you should ask a leader in any country. You probably know this. He said, ask them where they got their power from, ask them who can take it away, ask them if they accept it when it's taken away. A few questions like that. And I think that's the great advantage of the democracy, is the democratic system, is we can get some rotten people in power, but we can also get them out. And that in the end, if you just said what is the one best thing in the democratic system, I'd say it's that.
And the problem is you can also get people in, right? So we now know that Joe Biden, Donald Trump will be running against each other.
Oh, I know.
I think it's a poll that you had in one of your articles. Trump is pretty popular.
The New York Times last week had a poll that said that Trump would beat Biden, I think, 47-43. I mean, I'm still slightly coming to terms with the fact that we're going to have another Trump-Biden race. I'm not sure if I've got the emotional energy for it.
No.
Goodness knows how the American public do.
So assuming Trump comes in, I mean, what's it going to mean for you, for me, for places like South Africa?
Well, for you and me, for journalists, it's going to be a busy time.
Yeah.
Because if there's one thing Trump does do, it's makes noise. It's extremely hard to predict what Trump does on the international stage, and that's for a couple of reasons. One is that he is enormously impulsive. We might have noticed that, but I mean, he is enormously impulsive, and he can very often change a major view on something to do with what is actually quite a minor personal matter. He likes being seen as being unpredictable. That is also another thing. there is something in that. It's known in American politics as the madman view, which is that on the international stage you're dealing with you're dealing with brutes. You know, you're standing up to Putin, you're standing up to, you know, all sorts of people. So therefore, don't play too nice. Now, there's something to be said for that. There's also something to be said by showing and leading by example. What will Trump be like in office part 2? If he comes in, my own fear, and I've said this in print, is that I fear that he is very vengeful and that he is out for vengeance, and that includes vengeance against aspects of the American state which he sees as being against him. America has huge problems at the moment. I mean, there's one I would point to. You know, everybody has problems with education, but American education standards are far below what they should be for a first world country, for a developed country. You have very, very poor literacy and numeracy rates among students leaving school. You know, I mean, it's like 52% in New York State have basic numeracy or literacy when they leave school. That's really not on for a leading country like America. So my fear is he will not address those really big, again, it goes back slightly to what I was saying about South Africa, that he might not address those really big things that need addressing, and that he will pursue his time on vendettas. And
I'm going to ask you 2 things, then we can wrap it up. I know you're quite outspoken on immigration. What do you think, and the US, I mean, every country's got it. The US and the UK have got big problems. Where do you think the UK going? Where do you see them going? I
think I've said for a long time, I think mass migration is going to be one of the, if not the biggest issues of the 21st century. And it's something we have to address because it's there. It's not going to change. Mass migration is caused legally and illegally, is caused by wars. It's caused by economic factors. Very often it's just the drag that a country, as you know, I mean, the country that's doing well or comparatively well in a region is likely to be a great draw to people coming from countries that are less economically successful and have less opportunities.
Should they stay or should they be booted out?
Well, this depends country by country, and it depends on what the view of the people in the country is. Europe, the southern part of the Mediterranean, Europe, has a very, very big challenge of illegal migration of people coming from North Africa, and is nowhere near dealing with that. Britain suffers, as it were, the last bit of that because it's one of the, along with Germany and Sweden, it's the final point of destination for a lot of migrants. And that is roiling British politics. But America has a very similar thing. America has, I mean, the illegal migration by the millions in recent years to America. And, you know, this is going to be the issue at the next election in America. And I would just say every country, of all of the questions that exist with migration, my observation is there's one in particular that's important, which is the distinction between legal and illegal migration. I'll tell you why quickly. Illegal migration,
migrants versus refugees.
Well, there's that. There's that. If you allow a lot of illegal migration, you actually stop or at least diminish the amount of public tolerance for legal migration, and including asylum seekers. If you just let the borders run wild, you also allow something to happen which is happening very much in America and is, I would say, one of the main drivers between the possibility of Trump being re-elected, which is if you want to, I don't know if you know anyone who's done this ever, but if you want to immigrate into America legally, for instance, you fell in love with an American and you wanted to move and join them, or you had a job that was for an American cafe, it's incredibly difficult to do legally. But illegally, you can pay a horrible drug cartel and illegally walk across the border and you're in. That speaks to a basic sense I believe exists among South Africans, among Americans, among everyone, which is a very key concept, which is fairness. Is that fair or not?
Don't you think countries support the sort of illegal immigration because you don't have to ultimately give them rights at the end of the day?
Well, you do in America, you do in Britain. If you come into Britain, you have all the rights. You have legal representation, you have housing provision, you have healthcare provision. Now, those are, of course, themselves a very big draw. We don't know in the 21st century what this is going to look like. There was a poll I cited a little while ago when I was in Doha, I think it was Gallup who did it, so this is a couple of years old now, but a poll of people in sub-Saharan Africa that said that 1/3 of people in sub-Saharan Africa want to move. And we have no idea what that,
what it looks like,
what that's going to look like, how that's going to affect both the countries they're moving from or would like to move from, and the countries they'd move to. And there's one other quick complexity on that, which is very often you hear European and other politicians saying what we need to do is to raise living standards in the countries that people are leaving from. And that should be true anyway. I mean, that's in sub-Saharan Africa and elsewhere. Like here, it should be an absolute priority to raise living standards, raise education standards, raise those basic standards. But here is the thing that they haven't confronted, and it adds an extra problem to this. The evidence shows that if the living standards in a country increase somewhat, the emigration from the country increases exponentially because people have the money to pay the gangs and others who will help them leave. I don't think any politician is actually at the moment in any of our countries is up to the task of working out what to do about that.
Last question very quickly. Which politician would your part of the world like to see coming through in South Africa's next elections? What sort of picture would you like to see?
I can't speak for everyone. I can speak for myself. And I never say to any country how people should vote, or you've got to have skin in the game. I just hope that this country gets the kind of leadership it deserves. I said earlier, I mean, this is a country of enormous potential, enormous skills, enormous ambition and capabilities and richness. You deserve better than you have. And I don't know what that looks like, but I hope the South African public do.
Thank you.
Thank you.